Hey, Mitch, I'm so glad that you're here. You and I are talking about AI going into next year, what to expect kind of stuff. And Katie you and I met from Katie at, she's a PR person. She's studying at Georgetown, and she was kind enough to introduce us. But you are the Senior Associate Dean of Education and Innovation at the Simon School of Business for the University of Rochester. I mean, that's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a fun job, and glad to be here on the podcast with you.
Yeah, it's going. We never know what we might get into, but we're going to get into something that's useful for business owners. That's my main audience is business owners, privately held businesses, people trying to figure life out, kind of stuff. So how did your life journey get you to this point where you're dealing with education and innovation?
Well, I've always been excited about educational innovation. Actually, I mean, I studied even in college education, and that was the thing that I was most interested in. Kind of grew up with a father who was doing that kind of stuff, pushing the boundaries on kind of computers in schools at that time. But I've been a marketing professor for a number of years, engaged in lots of things that are kind of in this space. And when I had the opportunity to this job, it was just, fantastic chance, and been leading our AI initiative at Simon, which I think is really exciting effort.
Yeah. How long has AI been part of the puzzle for your work and your thinking?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Part of the problem there is defining exactly what you mean by AI. I think right now when we talk about AI, we mostly are really talking about Gen AI, generative AI, which kind of kicked off in, relatively recently, just about a year ago.
Yeah.
The really big piece with ChatGPT launching, kind of the 3.5 version. So last summer we set out an aggressive agenda of integrating AI into our curriculum, and we've been doing it for many years, but not in the same kind of level of play.
So sort of last summer, because for me, okay, sure, AI, okay, finance, AI has been matching up transactions and different things, that kind of stuff, sure, but
Yes.
but it was literally like from November of last year, and
That's
it
right.
was Christmas. I was with my son's father-in-law in Long Island, and he's talking about all this stuff their company's doing with AI. So that linguistic AI, where it's not quite there, but you can almost say, "Hey, good morning, AI. What are we doing today?" And it'll tell you.
Yeah,
You
yeah. I
know,
mean, Siri and Alexa and all these kind of things. Those are exactly that kind of interaction. But yeah, last November is when it really kicked up. The speed kicked up a lot. We started really paying attention, thinking about, okay, well, what does this mean for the first piece that everybody was talking about? Oh, academic integrity. This is going to destroy our ability to test students. This kind of thing. And by the summer, we realized, well, there were threats about that, but there's a much bigger opportunity to transform education.
yeah. Straight up, it's how fast it came onto the main street. It scared me because
Yeah.
I like some level, forecast, financial flight plan, clear destination, something meaningful. And this is such uncertainty. Um,
Yeah,
can be
Kirk,
exciting.
I was talking to somebody who's an expert in AI, and they said it surprised, like everybody was surprised how good this was. So I think there's kind of a sense of like, oh, okay, uh, even people who are deep in the field who've been working on it, like this person has been working on AI for like evaluating radiology diagrams. So that, like even people who are deep in it were caught a little bit by surprise, like, oh, this is a super simple tool and it's doing amazing things.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that says a lot. So the experts in the field are like, oh, it's more of a
yeah.
tsunami than a wave coming in, kind of thing. Okay, so students, because I talk to people who literally, they're writing books on AI. Like, write me a book on what I know. Just for the record, I didn't write my book that way. I did the hard way, typewriter, one key at a time. But really, you're gonna write a book? I mean, so how does that play out into the students? Because give me a term paper on monetary system.
Yeah. So that's a great question. I mean, one of the things that early in the conversation was kind of detecting some of the AI, uh, that students might be using to produce essays and things like this. And there are tools for that, but it's kind of hard to know exactly. really, I think when you're working with these AI, it's kind of an iterative process. And once you get into the iterative process and you're kind of interacting with it as almost a thought partner, then it's, what is human, what is AI, it gets a little more blurry. If you just ask it, write me a paper about this, it's actually pretty easy to detect relative to, the interactive version. And, part of our goal is to get people to be able to use it interactively, to be more effective, more efficient,
Yeah.
produce higher quality products. There's some tricks in that.
Okay, so that's the goal, because it's not like when calculators first came to be, it was like you can't use calculators. It does make sense, like in grade school, learn how to do your math, learn how to do addition. But that way, if the calculator is giving you a reasonable answer or not. But you guys are taking the approach as AI is here. It's good, and how do we use it in a way to not just get results that we were accustomed to before, but now you can do something better, right? You got this coworker.
Well, so we have a policy that's really flexible. I think this is important because some domains are just like the calculator when they first, like you were talking about the early stages of mathematics. You need to know some calculation abilities in order to be able to understand math, right?
Yeah.
You can't just because the calculator can do it, you can't just give it all up. And this is one of the things educators learned in a primary school. So our kids learn to do some of the calculation on their own. Same way, we have to really redefine and think about what does the expertise mean that students need. And so we've been, thinking about that a lot. And our policy for AI use is oriented on that. We got kind of red light, can't use it for exam or for, an assignment or something like this. Green light, you can use it, but only where I tell you, or that's yellow light. And then green light, you can use it unless I tell you not to use it. And so this kind of structure gives faculty a really clear way to communicate to students when they're able to use these tools. And then we kind of help them think about, okay, well, how could you pull this into the classroom?
Yeah. I mean, pretty cool. So you start to have structure, guidelines on students when to use the tool, when not to use the tool. What do you? I think it's too early to say what actually happens. I'm kind of more of a forecasting mode. There's a potential of a couple things. Like you got this AI coworker now in the school setting, AI peer student, whatever it is. It could elevate thinking. Like if the AI is doing a lot of the basic work, 80/20, then I can spend my time really thinking about or going deep into something as a student to bring out the better outcome. It could elevate thinking, right, and outcomes and clarity, or it could do the opposite where, hey, let me just stay with the baseline version 1 with a few edits so my personality comes through and it's not AI generated. What do you expect is going to happen like in the academic world? I mean, are we elevating or just?
Well, right now, I would say it's a mix. And the core piece of that is how do we teach critical thinking in the absence of the practice that we used to have on kind of more mundane elements? And so if you were relieved of some of the mundane elements, do you actually become a more critical thinker or actually a less critical thinker? And this depends a lot on domain. Give an example. If you're writing essays, I was just seeing a talk about this. You're writing kind of like a copy for an advertisement, and you have the AI give you a first draft. The tendency is actually to accept that as like kind of good enough, and you don't use as critical of an evaluation of it, and that leads to kind of lower quality ad copy. If you work with an AI as a think partner, a thinking partner, you can actually increase the quality. So there's a skill around how do you work with AI, how do you interact with AI to produce something better and to support or encourage that critical thinking skill rather than kind of just replace it and okay, that's doing it now, I don't have to do that work. So there's a mindset around that's important, but there's also kind of training around how do you interact with it, and those are pieces that we're really trying to push on.
Yeah, that's so useful. I mean, so one level of thinking is task level. Let me get the thing done, whether it's school or business. And the other level is, well, let me really elevate, do remarkable, drive an outcome. I bet you're going to see that the 80/20, Pareto principle. There'll be some people because of who they are, they're going to be motivated towards the minimal, task level work. And other people are being motivated. Wow, I got this at the greater capability. Now I can use the same amount of time, but get a different, better result. Human thriving, impact kind of stuff.
It's a challenge. I think a lot of people like you'll hear this, oh, you're making my head hurt, like thinking too much. That's kind of what people are going to be doing more.
Ah,
The head hurting part is, what you're going to be doing. Maybe you're not going to have to do it as much or as long a time, or this kind of thing.
yeah,
But that is kind of interacting and finding ways to leverage that higher capability.
yeah.
That's going to be really important.
Yeah, and are there certain things, you're in the business school, so are there certain things that you guys are really aligning things with from the business world standpoint?
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking with companies all the time right now about what they're doing. I was just in a conversation with a sort of a panel of people from industry, learning what is it that they're how are they doing applications? What are the challenges they're facing? All these kind of questions, so that we make sure that what we're delivering in the classroom is aligned with what is needed out there.
Yeah. And it seems like the skills to keep learning is going to be one of the key skills. The AI, whatever, version 3.5, it's already 4.0,
Yes.
you can pay for it. There's already got to be whatever, 4 point something, 5 point something in the bucket somewhere. So the student, like the skills for me to use 3.5, at some point, that approach is not going to be effective.
That's right. I mean, we're teaching them on 4.0 right now, and using some of those kind of tools. But Gemini came out a product from Google that is better at math. It's better at some kinds of logical reasoning. So we need to give them an education, not just some training and some tools, but an education that allows them to see, okay, how do these new pieces fit into the bigger puzzle? What does that mean for how I need to continue to adjust the way I work and the way I think about integrating these into business processes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's brilliant. You're developing people who can thrive across the life cycle, and then at some point bring the next generation along. What response are the students having so far?
Yeah, that is also mixed. Some students are like, "Oh, this is great! Now I don't have to learn this material," and then they run into troubles. So because you still need the expertise. Other students are embracing like, oh, "Okay, I see how I can use this to make myself, do even more." And so it's interesting. And one of the pieces of education is it's also transforming the process of education itself. We use ChatGPT as a coach for students as they're learning different kinds of activities. So you're learning to code, you can actually, give ChatGPT the coaching role that gives each individual student feedback live as they're working through a problem and learning to do
Wow.
a particular task, as an example.
Wow.
And so, the same kind of thing, you can give it that kind of a role for, say, a client interaction, and you say, okay, be the client, and at the end give feedback about how they did. Like you can do these things. You have to craft things carefully, but you can do things that really will change the picture. And there are there are folks out there who have developed custom versions of this as a virtual TA. So
That is wild.
this is really going to transform the way students are able to get individualized learning, and that's one of the pillars of what we're doing in our process at Simon.
That is wild, Mitch. I mean, it's almost like having, you remember the cartoons where the angel pops up and you got the angel and the devil on the other side. You say your virtual assistant can help make decisions. Hey, what about this? Well, what about that? Right?
Yeah.
Where you're not working in isolation. I mean, I can see that played into all kinds of professions. I mean, you could be a construction on a job site and saying, hey, why don't you think about, right, so that the water doesn't do that.
That's right.
Same thing,
Yeah.
finance, lawyer, doctor, right? When I'm looking at the X-rays and it's saying, hey, have you noticed
Yeah.
right? And there was a case in some remote place that you never would have heard about, that this might be one of those,
Yeah. No, that's that. And this is sort of like the augmentation
yeah.
piece that you're talking about. I mean, a lot of the news is focused on replacement, like, oh, AI is going to replace workers. But this is like suddenly somebody who is further away from maybe the knowledge center is able to get access to the latest and greatest and have it right built into the, customized to the task they're doing. I mean,
That's
it's
incredible.
really, powerful opportunities.
That is powerful. But otherwise, you're relying on the individual student, professional, worker, where they had, in order to know about that other possibility, they would have had to have some experience with it. And there's no way that any of us are, right? The AI can actually, at least reference more experience than I ever will as an individual. So, wow.
It's really, in some sense, I mean, solution is maybe too strong, but it's a solution to the experience many people have right now is just feeling overwhelmed with all the information on the web and the internet. And this is a tool that can summarize it and present it in context, recognize the context where that information is most relevant. And then if you can learn to interact with it, can do even better job.
Wow, that's, man, it's so exciting. Just imagine 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, where you have these personalities and different things interacting. It's almost science fiction.
I'm not sure it's 15 years out, and 5 or less. I think the custom GPTs are already here, where without writing any code, you can create a custom version for a particular kind of task you want to do. And using the APIs, you can do far more, like the virtual TA example I talked about.
Can you explain more about the custom version? Like, what is that? That's a relatively new concept to me.
Yeah, so if you subscribe to the ChatGPT Plus subscription, you have access to these custom GPTs, which basically you can, just with typing kind of in a prompt engineering way, interacting with this, the AI that's already there from the large language model. You give it special instructions, you can give it data, you can give it like sort of extra things, and it's customized to that task.
Wow.
So that it knows better how to do that task. So I mean, there's lots of examples, and they're creating a kind of a marketplace for these, so that other people can get access to yours if you want to give access to them, like a app store kind of thing.
That is wild. So it's almost like you onboard a new employee. Hey, here's some of the things that we look at in your data. So you're training them, how to allocate themselves to what you do in your business.
I think this is a space that's like a huge opportunity for smaller businesses. If you've got an expertise, you can provide this out there as a, kind of a tool to advertise what you're doing, or to actually, sell as part of a service, to connect it. I mean, so there's just amazing opportunities through this kind of framework.
That, Mitch, that's a good thought, because just I could imagine being some kind of like consulting company or project. It could, when they come in, they help your company get smart about AI, and there could be some recurring thing. Let's come back every quarter and let's update our roadmap and our thinking based on kind of what's happened out in the world since then, and what the company's experience has been with AI. So some it could be a brilliant company, right? So we're to help.
Well, there's all kinds of situations where, like, contractors of various kinds, like a lot of your interactions with clients could be supported by this kind of thing, where that you ask the questions to sort of get a framework of what they're looking for. It can create pictures on the spot. So by interacting it, either with the client, or you can just generate things very quickly. They're prototypes. So one of the really big values of these tools that people have found is you can prototype things much faster than you used to be able to do. And so I think for places that have to run lean, this is really can be huge.
Yeah, it's exciting. Just talking about it's exciting. What open up? Do you have like with a student, a success story where something somewhere the dots connected, and the light bulbs are going on, some kind of brilliant outcome? Is there any stories like that come to mind?
So we have some projects that we've gone through where students are doing some AI related stuff. I can talk about a class in particular where, like, they're developing kind of a version of what I was talking about, one of these TA type activities. The project is related to like a tutoring company, and they create like an AI assistant for this process. And students just, in engaging with this, they start to see how powerful these tools are, but they also learn the process of doing this design work, which is actually really important. And it's bringing, what I was talking to one professor about, we're taking what used to be like a fully computer science activity, like you have to design the software and do this, complex, and turning it into somebody with relatively low technical, I mean, they're still technical, but not to the same degree, is able to do this kind of work and create products that have immediate value.
That's
Um,
amazing, man. So they
you
can
know,
be more on the creative side versus the technical code something the right way. I remember I was back in school a long time ago, and like DBase 3 at that when COVID was not COVID, it was some other thing coming up, and I remember just trying to code that stuff, having no idea what's going on. Uh,
yeah.
I, I, I was never even going into that line of work. I mean, what am I doing? And so the idea of having this like this whatever I'm doing, where I can be more creative, looking at outcomes. Man, that's powerful. That's powerful.
The knowledge management component of this is really, I think, a pretty big aspect that people are going to leverage more and more. You have all these documents all over your organization, and just being able to identify what's the right one, summarizing these documents. I mean, you could think about it like a lawyer, like how many pages are they processing? Well, you can
Oh my
have this
God.
stuff summarized by one of these tools, and if it's trained well, it can even categorize things in ways you want it to do,
Oh,
and
mighty.
this kind of thing. So it really has the opportunity to shrink the need to process so much information all the time. Uh, we still need to be able to do that processing. Right? That's the trick, is that, okay, well, maybe you only need 10 people instead of 100 people to do that processing. Well,
Mhm.
how do you get enough people who learn to do that well that you still have the expert? Like, that's a really important question. Like, how do we ensure the expertise that our businesses need, our society needs, as AI is able to replace aspects of it or augment it, so that we don't need so many people?
Yeah.
That I think is a really big question that we're going to face.
That's a huge question, but it's going to happen. Instead of having like 10 paralegals going through, lawsuits, you get 65 banker boxes of just random documents, and you have to search for the gold, right? Instead of having like labor, which there's a diminishing return on labor, which may start a task, the energy level at one point, but there's right, so people miss stuff, and and um and people have different skills. You're talking about training the AI. Well, it's no different than training the person. And in AI, once it's trained, it'll probably be more consistent than a group of 20 people, right? It's human nature, right? We have more going on in there. Um, so like in the finance world, like our world, where people are buying companies, selling companies, doing like raising capital, right? Due diligence, right? And can you
Mm-hmm.
imagine?
Yep.
Can you imagine the data input? Whatever, a couple days to have somebody feed a lot of data, and then you have some really crystal clear things on where to spend your time as the higher level, higher functioning expert, to make sure it's a good deal for everybody, right? We make money on this, man.
Even the interview processes, the data collection, like many of these things, you can imagine not long from now will have AI components in them. They'll just be embedded in the process to make it much more efficient. Already, I was talking to a research company, somebody from a research company, that like they're building these tools to make it for the surveys, the survey development, the design, the implementation, like all that stuff is going to be AI assisted. There's a human still in the loop. Like that's the primary modes right now, but they'll have this, AI doing a bunch of the work. And then when the data comes back, do a bunch of the, analysis presentation, like actually create the
Man,
slides, all the whole process will be so much more efficient. And from a human's perspective, like that's just like a survey. Qualitative research, even more so. Like the opportunities are amazing. And when you start thinking about like video avatars that you can feed a script to it, and it'll talk just like me.
yeah,
Um, and that's now you can really like literally what is the movie where the duplicates of yourself, kind of idea, almost reality in this space.
you could
So
literally as an actor be making 10 movies at the same time, right? That kind of stuff be out there. And the secret for the audience here, we're actually avatars.
we're not real.
we, we're off on the beach somewhere doing stuff, man. That
And
is
but this gets to important legal rights over. I mean, this is with the actors strike. This was a big piece of that, the writer strike in Hollywood. But you've got opportunities for the same kind of things everywhere. In academia, copyright law indicates like when, I'm writing stuff as a professor, in some sense that's owned by the school.
Yeah.
And if I teach a class and it's recorded, again, in some sense that's owned by the school. All right, well, if you've got a bunch of recordings of me and you can create one of these AI avatars, they can start running classes. Do I need to approve that? Like, what's my right? I mean, so there's sort of legal rights
Yeah.
about these things that I think go beyond the frameworks that we've had that are going to be really important. I think there's kind of, almost like a unionization aspect of who owns what that might play out over the next
Yeah.
period.
It's a huge question, and the related property rights, right? So that when there's property rights, people invest in the property, make the property better, and you definitely see pros and cons. Like if there's somebody, let's say there's a brilliant instructor, right? And instead of having a class of 400, I've been in a class with 400 people, and let me tell you what's not effective, right? Is being in a class with 400 people. You could literally break the class up into smaller groups, and you could have discussion groups. You could have classes of 6 people who really get to know each other, right? Because you can have that one-on-one attention with the professor or the guru, that kind of thing. Oh my God, it was almost personalized learning, small groups, that peer-to-peer collaboration. Oh my God, it changes the whole learning experience, and it could be adapted. The AI could adapt based on the interaction in the group, and what is, instead of overwhelming people where they get stuck, let me find out where they're at and let me just take them to the next step based on their pace, and adapt teaching methods, because we don't all learn
That's
the same
Yeah,
way.
that's exactly the methods, the problems you give them, the pace of the problems, all of it can be very much more individualized than the traditional system. But this requires kind of a class of knowledge work that's related to stuff that we have. We have this team here at Simon, the instructional technology and innovation team, and they are supporting a lot of the AI and instructional technology efforts. And so you need kind of a group of people who know how to manage some of those pieces and work with the professors to start going down these kind of paths.
Wow.
So you got like a kind of a new layer of work, and we're talking about replacing work, making it more efficient. But you also have new work to make this even better
Yeah.
output.
Well, expand on that. You're talking about the role shifting. In that specific example, how do you see, a little bit deeper on how do you see the new work?
Yeah. So as an example, learning how to. So we're talking further out right now with the AI avatars, but learning how to manage the small group interaction you were talking about with the AI avatar, making sure it's not going off track, making sure that you're feeding in those small group things back to the overall progress and what the outcomes need to be, the connection to the learning outcomes. So it's about instructional design. It's about technology, and just understanding enough of the content, being able to connect with the professor enough about the content that kind of the process can function.
That is
Um,
wild. That is wild. I can even, using your imagination. I don't know if you know Zig Ziglar, like a speaker, teacher, kind of stuff. I would love to be in a class with him, because he's just entertaining. I mean, and brilliant with some of
yeah.
the insights. And then you could go talk to Walt Disney and this kind of stuff, and Ford, and really have a conversation with them, right? And they're adapting. The avatar would be adapting to the conversation. It wouldn't be a recording, right? Oh
That's
my
right.
God.
Now, it won't have the creativity entirely that these particular speakers would have or these particular individuals would have, but it'll have aspects to them. And one of the things that I think is really interesting already is you see people using these to say, okay, react to this business plan as if you were Elon Musk, right? Well, okay, Elon Musk is this guy who's written tons of stuff in the public domain, so you have the ability for an AI to try and use that data to construct what would this person respond and make predictions about that. So there are interesting things like that already, and that's without actually trying to train it to do this.
That is
Right.
wild.
So I think there's all kinds of opportunity. Um, the TA tool I was talking about, they actually fed it all the class materials, like in transcripts of the videos and so forth. And so they use all of this data about what the course is, so that the AI has that background, that specific background, and is able to respond to questions related to all
Wow.
that. So I think, like, you can think about it as like, well, put the life works of whoever, and now focus on this person, and what does that, how does that produce further outcomes?
It definitely creates more access, even though it's not perfect, like the creative person, it gives the
Yeah.
small group a chance to interact with whoever, right? It could be somebody living, actor, actress, whatever. It could be somebody who's deceased. You really want to the point you can have a discussion to really understand them, their challenges, their pain. How did they get to be here? Why did you keep 10,000 attempts for a light bulb? Why didn't you quit? Right? I mean,
Yeah.
to really get in, there's something driving, right, Edison and kind of stuff. So you almost you start to bucket some of the thinking out. So on one hand, it's going to raise the bar because the block and tackle stuff just got easier. Okay.
Yeah.
On another hand, it's going to make things in academia and business. It's going to make things more efficient because you're not going to spend you're not going to spend literally hundreds of hours going through all the documents, right? It's going to be something like that. And then there's at least a third bucket. There's a new frontier of what's possible. Like go where no man, I'm not Kirk, go where no man has gone before. I probably should say go where no person has gone before. There's gonna be new frontiers of just absolutely what's possible because of all these other constraints being limited or being reduced, kind of thing. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the new frontier is probably the area we have the least knowledge of. I mean, we can think about, okay, this company is doing predictions that let them, do their food deliveries better, or so there's various things, like we see the AI applications already that kind of make things more efficient. The
Yeah.
brand new products are a little bit trickier. But give me an example that like this is I think in the world of feasibility, but I haven't seen anything quite like this yet, is the nature of storytelling and kind of in the process of gaming. Gaming is a huge industry,
Yeah.
and the process of creating these games and developing the story and making that story something that's personalized. Right now, like if you do one of these games where it's kind of a role-playing game, everyone's playing the same game. There might be kind of different paths a little bit, but it's sort of the same game. And open world is something really people care about in that space. But now you can have open world with actors that are acting through these AI with their own agendas, own goals in this world, and they're just doing stuff. And the world you experience or your friends experience is completely created with personalities that are rich and build off of historical figures or whatever figures that whatever canon, and that that experience is a very different experience than I think we have right now in that space.
Yeah.
And with AI, you'd be able to do these kinds of things so much faster.
So fast. And then somewhere there's quantum
Yeah.
computing out there, which is a different way of computers that work like the universe versus zeros and ones kind of stuff. I mean, really, there's positive. There's certainly going to be some bad actors, some misdeeds, some miscalculations, so some kind of stuff. But there's got to be overwhelmingly human advancement, human thriving, right? How to healthier planet, better lives, more purpose, kind of stuff. My whole thing is business owners getting financial freedom, for freedom of purpose, freedom of time. Really, why do we start the business in the first place? Why are we here? So there's so I think about the business world. So you're generating these really that 80-20, those top students coming out of the university. They're going to be really, really, really good, right? They're going to have skills that the previous generations currently in the business are just not gonna think the same way, right? Because your folks are coming up in a different, like, technology does shape thinking, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So I wonder, even like it's almost like you get a racehorse, and right, and you release them from the university. They might have some internships along the way, some experience, and it's like, gosh, they get into like business, because a lot of we as humans are there's that 65 million year old emotional brain. Status quo feels safe, right? Even if there's a positive, better positive path, this is what I know. My computer uses zeros and ones, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts about helping students? I think I'm gonna ask this question from both ways. Like the student going into the business world, and they're coming in with a different kind of a like ability.
Yeah.
And then likewise, how do we help businesses? The second part of the question will be how do we help businesses really like embrace this stuff? Because hey, there's a racehorse. You're a racehorse, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think about is the university preparing the students? Hey, you're going to go into a world that's not going to fully understand you.
Yeah. And there's a couple different aspects of this. I mean, I think one of the things is helping students guide into the roles that will allow them. So there's a career management process of this. How do we help students who really are engaged in this domain the most get into roles where the roles are going to be, they're expecting or appreciating those aspects.
Good. Nice.
And I think, like consulting is an area right now, hundreds of projects, brand new projects in the last year kind of thing for these consulting companies in the AI space. So how do we help direct them to the right careers and support that process? So that's one piece of it. And then the other piece of it is helping people understand how to talk about and communicate on creating value from AI, right? I mean, one of the most important parts is like, okay, well, what's the language you speak? Well, profit. You've got your habit to profit in your book, right? This has got to be part of the language. It's not AI because it's cool or AI because it's coming. It's AI because it creates value to my business today, or it's creating option value so that if something comes, we're ready for it. The kind of scenario planning kinds of things you talk about in your book. It's like those are the kinds of things that we need to help students understand and communicate about to help become change agents for companies when they come in.
God, that's so great.
Even if the company isn't quite ready necessarily for it, speak the language, and that's also part of what we do here.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, and it's gonna be something. So for the business people, we focus more on business owners, but there's teams, there's corporations. For the business people who embrace this as a positive, like this is positive, and how do we do it well so that it's safe? Because human beings, if I'm going to venture out into the wilderness, is it positive to go out there? Is it safe, right? And so for us to proactively, have that mindset, we're going to have it. The business owners who are doing that are going to have an advantage over those who resist it, stay status quo. The ones who lag at some point, it's like if businesses were still working with pen and paper, and they haven't brought in the first PC, man, you're at a real disadvantage. You can't move fast. You don't know you don't have the nervous system of the computers where you know what's going on, and you're not gonna be able to innovate and really stay connected with your customers, doing the best thing. But it'd be very easy to, I built my business on pen and paper. I'm staying on pen and paper. It'd be very easy to not proactively embrace and discover what the AI can do.
I think actually what you're bringing up is actually a really important point, and it's an important point that if you talk to consultants in the space is one of the biggest challenges, the data architecture. So it's not just mindset. Like part of that data architecture you're talking about is just real barriers. If it's all on pen and paper, you don't have the data in something that AI can process and leverage.
Yeah.
Even if it's in like spreadsheets spread out all over the place, which is probably the most typical thing for kind of a smaller business.
Yeah.
That's also going to be hard to leverage. And so there's a lot of data architecture work that has to happen to really start leveraging some of these tools. That doesn't mean all the tools, but some of them you're gonna have the most bang for the buck when you have a kind of a data structure that allows the tools to interact with that data.
Oh,
that's some of the work that companies will need to do who are a little further behind. They have to kind of do that work to get ready. It's like the dashboarding. There's certain basic things you got to do before you're ready to do kind of the next step. And for some companies, even if they're not ready to jump into the full AI piece, but some of that work is important. at this stage.
Well, let's highlight that, because if I understand it right, always tell me if I'm off or misunderstanding or wrong. The basically get how you work out of spreadsheets and documents and get it into a system. So at least it's a database where the AI could start to access it. Is that kind of a foundation step?
For structured data, yes. Like if you've got it all over the place and it's not in a way that is easy for AI to the AI tools to leverage, that is kind of a first step. But unstructured data, there's processes there to turn that into data that AI can work with too. So if you have a document here and a document there, how do we transform those so that it can be processed and leveraged? And this is an interesting place where, well, that might create like, oh, I can make sure nobody does take advantage of my data, right? So there's a data security aspect of this, that if it's all on pen and paper, it's like hiding your money in the mattress. You're not going to make a return, but nobody's going to be able to take it, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess unless they come to your house.
Come to the house, the house burns down, or the water damage, and but yeah,
yep.
Good point.
So I mean, but it's the same kind of thing. Like, there is some security in that, but the real security is going to come from making sure that you've got a good security protocol on whatever you're doing, and you're still able to leverage that for return from AI activities.
And those investments, so that I like this foundation work, but it's very hard to start at a full sprint, right? Crawl, walk, run, to do the foundation work, do it well. Sometimes, in my own experience, when I build a business, I'm not aware of the foundation, right? So I'm trying to do step 3 and not even aware that there's 1 and 2, and pay a price for that. Usually delay, money wasted, delay kind of stuff. So it definitely makes sense to get some expertise. Hey, what do I need? And I think a good way to think about things too. Hey, from a life standpoint, where do I want to end up? What's the vivid vision of my future self? Where does the business fit into that? Like, what are we going to do with the business? But now it's a straight line: household income, value, that kind of thing. What do I really care about, right? So I can bring my team members along, so they're doing well. Then when I know what I need out of the business, then it starts making sense. Like, based on what we can reasonably, it could be bringing in experts, whatever it is, what can we reasonably expect in this technology enabled world, and start to create kind of a roadmap from where clear idea of where I want to be updated sometimes frequently, because sometimes you get clarity. Where are we at? And what's that next step to make sure the foundation is good? The next step to make sure that the people are good, like the current generation that's in the workforce can embrace, become a racehorse, right?
Yeah. Well, there's one piece of this for smaller companies, small medium companies, that I would raise that is a little different than the framework you just gave, which I think is fantastic for thinking about how do we create the value and how do we make sure that's aligned with the vision of the founder. But there's another piece, which is like, how do you make sure that this isn't your crisis about to happen? And so I think forecasting the potential for crisis is important. And if you don't have any knowledge about the space, like, the chance of missing that forecast is going to go up, right? Is your industry one that's going to get disrupted by AI? Is your company something that's going to be disrupted by it? You may have a plan 10 years from now. You're going to, I'm going to retire and I'm going to sell the business, and this is the idea. But if 5 years from now you get disrupted, so you need to have that forecast. So you can't just be internal focused. You got to think about what's the potential risk. And sometimes you got to do some simple things, try some simple things in order to start to learn and practice and understand how it might impact your business. So there's questions about evaluating that crisis. I think that's important.
Do you have some practical ways that a business owner could at least start to evaluate those potential threats?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the number one thing is getting familiar with the kinds of capabilities that are there, not at a really deep level, but understanding, like, kind of at a high level, the kinds of capabilities, and then recognizing where in your value chain that the company's producing value, AI might be able to insert itself to change the total value picture that you are adding in that system.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it has to be, and it's sort of foundational work. This is just what we've been doing for the ever X number of years. But you got to think about okay, this is the pieces where we're adding value that, others aren't doing, or this is how we're generating the value for our clients. Well, what of those pieces might get replaced
Yeah,
by or augmented in some way? And if we're not doing it, somebody else is going to be able to do it faster, cheaper, whatever, and win the contracts.
that's brilliant. So literally, you're playing chess at that point. You're seeing the advantages, but you're also seeing where the threats are and what might come in.
Yeah.
And you can add to the discussion like blockchain. I mean, I don't fully understand it, but something about how it eliminates the middleman in the insurance industry, right? And I don't
Mhm.
understand it, but I'm gonna keep talking to people and reading until I at least have a view to help advise clients or guide clients. But so if there's one word advice, we'll go into the landing mode now. If there's one word
Mhm.
advice, either to students or business owner, what would you put out there to them?
Um, uh, so for business owners, I would say evaluate that crisis and the potential value. Like those are it's not one word I know,
Yeah,
but evaluate would be the word to start from. For students, invest, right? This is the time to invest in your human capabilities around AI.
yeah, that's great. And the thinking how to use the tools. I wonder, like when you say this, I wonder, like like businesses, private businesses. Uh, I'm kind of thinking about create a formal discovery team. Formalize the process of going out and investigate. For the tools that you use, what is that developer's roadmap for AI? And then outside of that, for the different functions, what do you see out in the world now? What can you anticipate tomorrow? Those disruptors kind of stuff. But formalize the process because most business owners, too many, active hours and their things kind of come across ad hoc, like Chat GPT pops up, and now we react to it. And but if they have like I don't know, every 6 months, once a year, have a formal team together and change the members, so you're getting different thinking at different times. Let people go out and spend some time on that and really investigate, and then create a roadmap. This is how I see my things impacting my industry, this is my company, and how do I proactively stay ahead of it? Um,
Yeah.
and a big piece I'm taking from your education, you got to elevate people's skill. That they got to function. That can't be the task level. Increasingly, it won't be the task level because the machine will do it, and they'll do it better. So how do you elevate people when they're doing really well at the next upgrade of skill, and and potentially people could be doing better. I mean, if I'm doing this level of work, I mean, your team members' compensation, earnings, the company's profitability, the value of the business, that you're staying ahead of this curve versus the ones that avoid, put their head in the sand and avoid this. Their company value is not right. Household income going to go down versus
Yeah.
right. Um,
Yep. That's right. That's right.
so
I mean,
really
I mean,
fast.
the key is like, what are people going to pay for from the space? Like, is it just you're going to get cutting costs essentially, and reducing labor per output, or is the output going to change in quality so that people are willing to pay for that higher thing? Maybe it's faster, or it's they can see the design better, or whatever it is that they might be willing to pay for. So this kind of is a top side or bottom line kind of aspect that you're changing.
Yeah. To put it out there, cost cutting, you pruning expenses every year, making sure that what you're spending money on, you're getting value on. That's really smart. That's part of the financial budget, flight plan budgeting,
Mhm.
managers owning their numbers. That's very healthy. But cost cutting is not a path to success, right? That's go for the bigger outcome. Like where do you invest your people, your skill? Like I'm going to cost cut my business to success. Really? That's going to be the focus point. That's what you do backstage. Is a
Well,
normal course of being effective.
the key is that could be pressure on the prices you're charging clients. If
Yeah,
others are doing the AI and they're cutting the costs through the AI and able to charge lower prices, then you're losing the top side. I
yeah,
agree. Like it's not necessarily a growth, but if others aren't doing it and you are doing it, that's a growth strategy, right?
yeah.
So,
There's definitely gonna be
um,
pressure on the definitely gonna be pressure on
yeah,
the pricing because if for example, if you're a software developer and you're not using the AI to do the block and tackle stuff, your competitor who is or that disruptor
copywriters, I was talking about a company, the SEO company, so search engine optimization company that like provides this service to others. I mean, this changes the game dramatically.
Yeah.
But there's a really this other pressure, like, well, is Google going to penalize AI generated content? That's like a so there's all these like elements that you have to. So what is going to happen in our industry? Like there's just you have to evaluate those things to figure out what is the crisis I might face and play out the scenarios.
I really want to emphasize that evaluate the different scenarios, and it's not going to be a steady state. Cat and mouse. We do this, Google does that, and so be ready to eyes open, measure, see what's going on, but proactively. That's really good stuff. So I'm gonna bring it in for a landing here. What's the best way if somebody wants to contact you? What's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, it's pretty easy to find me on Google. Mitch Lovett, professor. You'll probably locate me easily that way. Email, contact me through that is a great means of reaching me.
Yeah, University of Rochester, they can find you. That's fantastic. Yeah. So, hey, Mitch, thank you so much. Do you mind if I reach out to you periodically to keep bringing in the next level of thinking? I don't think this is going to be, one and done kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is great. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be on the show with you, Kirk.
Hey, thank you so much for coming, and I can't wait to our next conversation.